When Gordon arrived on the railway, Sir Topham Hatt purchased brand new express coaches for him. They had sturdy metal bodies, smooth bogies, and separate compartments for the passengers. Gordon was well pleased with his coaches. The old coaches felt left out. Time and wear had made the railway inspectors see them as unworthy of the main line. "Cheer up," smiled Edward. "You'll still be useful on the branch line trains." "Branch lines?" They shuddered. "How embarrassing!" While Henry was shut in the tunnel, Edward took over his local trains. He knew all about being left behind, and brought the old coaches out as often as he could. This cheered them up. Until Gordon voiced his opinion. "A pity. But that's the price of progress, if you ask me. Why, even you would have made a prime express engine at one point, Edward. I suppose it's only natural that modern engines require modern coaches." "Is that so?" smirked Edward. "Why, I think you would look most distinguished pulling these old dears." "No, thank you," Gordon harumphed. "They'd be open-topped carriages before I even reached top speed. Now these are proper coaches," he finished. "Oh, is that what they are?" Thomas chuckled. "I thought someone had stretched out the goods vans and you were doing some real work for once." Edward couldn't help but chuckle, and Gordon fumed out of the station. His mood didn't improve on the main line. They were going well. Too well. "Settle down, Gordon," scolded his driver. "We aren't running a race." Real work. Real work. I'll show those engines a thing or two about real work." Next morning, Gordon tried to leave the shed, only to find that he couldn't. "What's happened to me?" he groaned. His crew inspected him. The trouble was not hard to find. "Something's wrong with your tender brakes," said his fireman, "and with how you were going about, I'm not surprised." Thomas laughed. "And you thought the old coaches would be the ones that would fall apart?" Edward gave him a look. "This is no time for teasing, Thomas. The express must go out on time." "And how?" grunted Gordon. "You aren't strong enough to pull those coaches, Edward." Edward looked at the coaches in the carriage siding, and then he spotted something else. The passengers were getting anxious. There was no train, and it would soon be time to leave. Sir Topham Hatt stepped out of his office to see what the matter was, when he noticed a most peculiar sight. Edward came shuffling in with all the old coaches he could find. The passengers were surprised, but thankful they had a train at all. They hurriedly boarded the coaches, and the fat controller smiled. "Well done, Edward. Most resourceful of you. Don't push yourself too hard." Edward smiled. "I may not match Gordon's pace, sir, but I'll have a jolly good try." The guard blew his whistle, and Edward started. Soon he was coasting down the main line. He whooshed through the tunnel, giving Henry quite a surprise. "Go on, Edward! Go on!" he cheered. Come along, he puffed. The coaches were very pleased with Edward. "Gentle and fast, they cooed. At the last station, all the passengers got out and thanked Edward. The engine at Vickerstown was shocked, but looked on with admiration. Edward just smiled. He was looking forward to a nice long rest. When they got back to Sodor, Edward spoke kindly to the old coaches. "Well, my dears, how did you fancy returning to the glory of the Express?" "Oh, it was wonderful, Edward," said one. "Although," added another, "perhaps you were right. Some leisurely branch line work does sound most enticing." Edward laughed. "Well, my dears," he chuckled, "I think it's time for a well-earned rest in the carriage shed." That won't be necessary." Gordon slunk up beside him. "The fat controller has given me temporary reprieve of the rigors of mainline work. I shall be escorting these fine coaches." "That's not what he said," chuckled Thomas. "He said that you were to shunt in the yard until you learn not to be so big in the smoke box." "Take us away, then," ordered the old coaches. "Double quick, chop chop." Edward and Thomas laughed, while Gordon went red in the face and shuffled silently away.